Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy SS Shine coming to you with another video. And on today's video, we're gonna be working on this green 1970 Chevelle on the lift. Today's video is basically going to be focused on a transmission removal from this 1970 Chevelle here. This Chevelle came to me from New York, and it's got a custom LSX setup under the hood, and it's running a 4L80 transmission. Unfortunately, we had some premature wear on the transmission, so it needs to come out before the car can return home. So today's video, we'll be taking the transmission out. If you guys have never done it, I want you to stay tuned and stay focused. I'm going to be giving you guys pointers on how to get a transmission out of a car. Peace. All right, guys, so here we are. We're under the Chevelle, and we're about to start the removal process. So first things first, when you're removing the transmission, like most automotive how-tos say, make sure the battery cable is removed. Yeah, all right, but on this, you really got to make sure it's removed, because part of the process is you need to remove the starter to access the torque converter bolts in the flex plate. So when you're dropping that starter down, you want to make sure, before you drop that starter down, you want to make sure you have that battery disconnected. I like to just go ahead and disconnect the negative on the battery. That's pretty much all you need to do. You don't need to take both cables off. Just the negative alone is enough, assuming you don't have a second negative attached to the battery, still grounding it out. All right, guys, so we're under the Chevelle here, and we're getting ready to remove the transmission. I just want to go over some of the first steps that we're going to be doing. One of the first steps is removing the starter. As you can see here, I already have the starter removed on this one. And one of the reasons you want to remove the starter is so that you can get to the flex plate bolts, which connect it to the torque converter. So as you can see here, my flex plate's moving independent of my torque converter here. As you can see, the torque converter is spinning freely. So that part is already done. That's like one of the first things you do after disconnecting the battery cable. Next, you're going to be focused on the transmission cross member here. As you can see, I already have the transmission mount undone. The cross member to frame bolts are already undone. And next, we'll be going in with a transmission jack, getting the transmission up so that we can get the cross member out. Then, depending on the car, every car is different, but depending on the car, you may have to remove the exhaust so that you can get the engine to drop back far enough to access all the bolts at the top of the bell housing. So we're going to see what we need to do next. One other thing you may want to consider, it's not mandatory, but it could save a whole lot of mess, is you may want to consider draining the transmission before removing it. I have this one plugged in the rear, which will keep it from spilling out on me. But because we're shipping it off and I'm gonna have this thing on the pallet, I'm gonna opt to drain this thing while it's conveniently still in the car. So that'll be my next step. All right, guys, so now we have the transmission drained, and we have the transmission cross member undone. As you can see, the transmission is free and clear underneath. So now the struggle is figuring out whether or not we can get this transmission to come down enough in the back without having to undo the exhaust. Now, the point of having to undo the exhaust, if we had to, would be to get to bolts that we cannot see that are on top of the bell housing. Sorry if the lighting is bad, guys. I'm going in and out of different lighting, so we're gonna see if we can get this transmission to drop back far enough to access those bolts. But before we do access those bolts, there are a few other things we want to focus on. One being the transmission shift rod here, which is already undone. I have that undone. You have to get the electronics undone. As you can see, I have that undone. I have to get the speedo plugs here, front and rear. Get those out, and then you want to make sure you don't have anything else holding the wiring to the transmission as you're lowering it down. So we're gonna see if we can get better access to those upper bolts right now. See if we can lower this thing down. Let's see. All right, coming back a little bit, but I can tell that we have some binding up on this exhaust. So I'm gonna opt to remove the exhaust hangers back here, and then allow the exhaust to lower down, which will give me that angle I'm looking for. Or I can opt to disconnect the exhaust right here. But I think I'm gonna opt to disconnect it in the rear and just have the whole system hang down. So let's focus on that. All right, guys, so now you can see we got the exhaust unbolted, hanging down, which in turn allowed us to have a better angle to remove this thing. Every car is different, especially if you're talking about like a custom LS swap like this. One thing about this car is that it has more of a solid motor mount. Not all the way solid, but those are some pretty solid polyurethane style mounts right there. They're not the traditional mounts. I have a custom mount on here because I'm running a custom low mount AC. So the mount on here doesn't exactly allow the engine to angle down as much as I like, but it's a better mount for performance. So, but it does make it harder if you have to remove it. So that being said, we got the transmission angled down. I think, you know, as you can see, it's still pretty tight up in there. We're gonna get the extensions out and see if we can get to these bell. You can't even see these things right here. Sorry, this camera's not picking it up. It's not gonna be easy, but we're gonna get to those top transmission bell housing bolts using a system of extensions and swivels and things like that. So that's the next step. Another thing, guys, is depending on how much lean back those engine mounts give you, you may have to, you may end up having to put a screw jack under the crankshaft to give you every little last bit you can get it. So for me, just leaning it back wasn't enough. So I'm gonna go under the crankshaft right now with this screw jack, and this is gonna get me all the tilt that I can get. Don't go too crazy. You don't want to start lifting the car up or nothing like that. But just go under that crankshaft, nice little amount of pressure. That's going to give you all the lean back you can get. It's going to help you out a lot. So what you're going to be using to get these top bolts is you're going to need a 15 swivel like this. I got a combination of 3/8 extensions. We got a 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter, a few shorter 1/2 inch extensions, and one long 1/2 inch extension. Now you might be able to get them done with all 1/2 inch extensions, but my experience has told me that once you get up in these tight spaces, you're gonna need the 3/8. So if you look closely, see if we can catch it. If you look way up there, let me see, get the lighting right, guys. Give me 1 sec. All right. Man, it's blurry right now. Hold on. If you look up there, you can see a bolt, a little gray bolt right there. I need to get to that bolt right there, and then there's also one bolt to the side of it. Let me zoom this in. Sorry, guys. It's a struggle. All right. So you see that gray bolt up there? Right there. That's the top bell housing bolt at 12 o'clock. And as you can see, it's a really tight space getting to it. There's also a bolt to its left, I would say around 10 o'clock, 10 to 11, closer to 10:30. Also got to get that bolt out too. So those are the two hardest to reach bolts. And we will be using all of these extensions right here to access them. All right, time to get that bolt we talked about that's hanging out at 10 o'clock. Trying to get that bolt out the way. Got the 12 o'clock bolt out the way. Now that one. Then it'll be 4 more after that. I'm gonna go ahead and get some wiring out the way. And get this extension up in there. Let's see. Right there. Oh, this is my look. Now, this thing out. All right, so we got the 1030 bolt out. Now the last 4 bolts to the left. Come on, pal. Now the last 4 bolts to the left are gonna be at the 4 side bolts. So we're gonna get those now. We don't need as much extension to get those off, so you're gonna take some of that extension out. And then go ahead, start on these 4. Once these are out, we'll be clear to start separating the transmission from the engine. Now I decided to save the transmission lines for the last step because honestly I don't like working with a bunch of fluid on the ground or a bunch of fluid dripping and tripping. I have to tell my kids, I say dripping and tripping. But you know, I don't like working with a mess on the floor. And one thing I learned from my experience is that transmission fluid is real sneaky. Seems like no matter what you do or no matter what you try, transmission fluid always finds its way onto the floor. So if you ever pulled an engine out of a car or anything like that, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you plugged it back, but somehow that plug will find a way to jump out. You know, or if I'm pulling an engine, one thing I'll do last is I'll undo the radiator hoses and undo the coolant stuff last, because, you know, anything that will have a mess on the floor, I try to avoid and do that on the last step. So all of that to say that once I get these bolts out here, we got 1 more bolt left. Once I get these bolts out here, I'm gonna lower the transmission down a little bit more, and then I'll be undoing the transmission cooler lines at that point. Also, you have a transmission dipstick, fluid dipstick. Mine has already been disconnected from the firewall / engine, so I don't have to worry about that. But that is another step that you have to worry about when removing the transmission. All right, that's our last bolt right there. So now, what we're gonna do, we're going to get our pry bar out. All right, loosen this thing a little bit, loosen this front. Remember we put that guy in there. So we got our pry bar out, we got our torque converter undone, torque converter free. We're gonna go ahead and give the transmission a pump or two. Make sure it's properly secured. And then we're gonna start finding a point to start our pry on. So, get up in here. Sometimes there's a little slot on the side of the transmission. What I'm gonna do first, actually, I'm gonna try to wiggle this thing loose by hand. Let me see. All right, like that. Let's see if we can get this thing to wiggle loose. Oh, here we go. All right, so I got some space on that side generated. Now let me go ahead and get this side to produce a gap. Let's see. Ooh, careful. My transmission jack is moving on me. These transmission jacks have these arms on them. You want to make sure you got those secure on your transmission so that your transmission doesn't try to run away. One thing to worry about. or make sure of, and then tighten these little arms up. See those moving a little too much, so get that right. All right. You want to make sure you got the transmission jack position right too, because the weight distribution on this thing is different. Where do you get those screwdrivers from? I'm watching you. I'm watching you, pal. All right. I need to get a little bit more of a gap on this side. A little pump. Oh, there it is. All right, so I got a gap there, I got a gap there. Gonna loosen this transmission jack a little bit right there. Get this pry bar, get in here, get this transmission, clear that dowel. All right, both dowels are clear. So now we're gonna lower the transmission down a little bit. And you wanna make sure when you're lowering it, because I said we're saving these transmission cooler lines for the last step. So as I'm lowering it, I'm making sure that none of my transmission cooler lines are pulling. So here we go. What was that? What do you got? You got that?
It's like this. I like this.
All right.
Daddy, have this so
Trying to make sure I got this transmission selector out of the way. Jay, Maya, what are you doing? I'm recording. Oh my God. What are you doing? I don't need help. Why were you touching my camera? Huh? Oh, anyway, get out of here. Scram. Boy, can't have nothing. Can't even have a video. All right, guys. Back to it. Back to our regular scheduled program. All right, check it out. So as I was saying, we're getting ready to drop this transmission down right now. Everything is out, it's cleared. Last step is removing the transmission cooler lines. Once we undo those, it's gonna wanna spill a little fluid. That's why I decided to say that to last. So here we are, we're coming down with it. Everything's clear. Bring it on down. Right there, just like that. Transmission cooler lines are still happy. All right, now, I want to go ahead while I got better access to my transmission dipstick. Get that out. All right. Transmission dipstick is out. Clear. All right. Now, I guess I'm pretty good. Got pretty good access to these cooler lines. Let me go ahead and get a 3/4 socket. 3/4 socket on this guy. These are banjo fittings on this one here. Banjo style fittings. Get my drain pan. Like I said, I don't want to deal with fluid all over the floor, so got my drain pan. First banjo fitting here on the rear inlet side. Again, guys, I'm pulling a 4L80 out of a 1970 Chevelle, and this thing is an LS swap car. So every car is a little bit different, but these same techniques and principles are gonna work on pretty much any transmission you need to pull out of any car. Front wheel drive a little bit different because you got axles and stuff like that to account for. This one had a drive shaft that I already had removed when we started the video. So you guys gotta excuse me for not going over anything drive shaft related. Hey guys, keep it down, I'm recording a video. Unfortunately, the kids have hijacked my shop and I have to share my shop in the back. They've created a shop out back, and that's what you hear them in the background now. They're in their shop right now. All right, so first banjo fitting here. And as you see, once you undo them, it's pissing all over the place. Nothing we can really do about that. But we're not gonna worry about that because we don't have to step in it too much more because we're done. All right, rear. Rear is out. Go ahead and hang those down, let them drain. Go ahead and flip the switch on this guy. And as you can see, transmission's ready. Go ahead and tilt this thing back a little bit. Like I said, you want to make sure you got your weight balance real good on this thing. That nothing starts going crazy. Make sure your wiring is clear on the way down. And there you have it. 4L80 transmission removal, 1970 Chevelle, LS swapped. And just like I said, those lines are pissing, making a mess, but I don't have to worry about stepping in that because we're pretty much done. So, one more thing. Tech tip here. Oh shit, hit my head. Tech tip here. When installing one of these 4L80s in a swap setup, you want to go ahead and cut this ear off, and you want to go ahead and cut this ear off. It'll allow the transmission to drop between the exhaust manifolds, or headers if you want to call it that, without having to remove the headers. Man, pretty much a cheat code. So yeah, cut that ear off, and you'll have a much smoother install or removal if you need to service it. So yeah, guys, man, today was a successful transmission pull. I hope you guys learned something. Man, start to finish, you're gonna disconnect the negative battery. Quiet. You're gonna disconnect the negative battery, remove the starter, remove the torque converter to flex plate bolts. You're gonna get the transmission cross member out of the way, support the transmission. If you need to, you're gonna drop the exhaust. And then after that point, you're gonna work on your transmission bell housing bolts. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts holding the transmission in. Once you get those out, you're gonna drop it. If you hadn't removed your transmission cooler lines, you're gonna do it as you pull it out. Not when you pull it down too far, but as you're pulling it out. Sometimes it's a lot easier, whether you have metal lines or soft lines, it's a lot easier to get to those transmission lines once you drop that transmission down some. So I hope this video helped you guys. Just a quick how-to, quick pointers. And yeah, if you guys appreciate it, man, smash that thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know what you want to see. We got plenty more footage coming. I'm just taking it easy, taking it light, letting you guys into my world. And man, we got all these cars in here to build. Stay tuned. We're going to be having build series coming soon. Peace.